Hi, what's up, everybody? I've had a lot of people over time ask me, hey, can you make some videos or just put some content out about tuning drums, right? Like, how do you get your drums to sound the way that you get them to sound? And I've been meaning to do this for a long time. I just literally have not gotten around to it because I've been busy. But it's a Saturday. I'm sitting here in the studio and I got to play. I'm playing at church tomorrow. So um, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a retune of my snare drums, or at least two of them. So this right here is my 6.5 by 14 Ludwig Black Beauty Hot Rod Edition. I think I'm pretty sure there's only like a certain number of these in existence. I could be wrong on that, but I know it's something that they kind of just came out with not too long ago, and I picked one up for a really good deal. And I mean, obviously Black Beauties are Black Beauties, but this thing, you can kind of see the finish there. Gold hoops, the matte black finish on the shell. I love it. It's awesome. Sounds incredible. This is my 8x14 Vertical Drum Company snare. It's an acrylic, orange acrylic. And I have three snare drums right now that I really use for everything. There's another Black Beauty that I have that's a 5x14. I use that for, whatever applications you would use a 5x14 for, I guess. But this is kind of my go-to snare most of the time. Obviously, it's just the most versatile. So, I mean, it just 6.5 by 14 Black Beauty. You can make that sound good on pretty much anything if you know what you're doing. But obviously, if you've been watching this channel for a lot of time, I make a lot of I primarily play drums on CCM genre, gospel, some country, jazz, funk as well mixed in there. I'm trying to do more stuff along those lines because I think a lot of people have seen me playing in the CCM genre, but not really so much that. But enough about me. Let's talk about tuning drums and specifically snare drums, right? So we had rehearsal Thursday. I was playing this guy, and he was sounding a little whack. My front of house tech told me, "Hey, there's something sounds off about it." I heard it in my ears. I was like, "Yeah, something sounds a little off about it." So, there's a couple ways to address that. But regardless of whether or not you're addressing a problem, it's always a good idea to just kind of, with your drums, I would say every month or every few months or so, just maybe tighten them up a little bit. Give them a little retune if you want to, even take them off. You got enough time to do that. But as far as like how to tune, right? Like, how do I actually get my drums to sound good? There's a lot of videos out there with a lot of different people that will tell you a lot of different tips and tricks. And mine are honestly not that complex. I tune by ear. I don't use a bot or anything like that. I've been playing long enough to where I can do that, but if you're just starting out, you might want to get a tune bot if you feel more comfortable having something in front of you that gives you a number and you're like, yep, that's what I'm aiming for. And I know there's a lot of different people online that'll tell you, oh, you want to aim for, this number or that number. So you can do that if you want, or you can, just tune it by ear and try to get the sounds you want. So with just a couple general rules of thumb. This right here, I've got my Black Beauty upside down. So this is the reso head with the wires. And, I'm not going to get into the whole, like, I could talk about how, there's different wire sizes will get you different sounds, right? Like this, I forget exactly how many wires I have on here, but I know on this one, it's like a 42 strand on the bottom, which is a lot more wires. And that'll give you kind of more of that, I guess, crackle sound in your snare, what really kind of makes the snare sound like a snare, essentially. If you have less wires, that can lead to a little bit of a tighter sound, per se. More wires, maybe I'd say a little bit easier to get a fatter sound out of it. And if you're like, what is a tighter sound and what is a fatter sound? Well, let me give you an example, okay? So if you listen to a lot of gospel tracks and stuff like that, versus maybe standard CCM, right? You're going to hear in gospel music, you're going to hear tighter snares, right? You're going to probably hear smaller snares. You're going to see a lot of snares that are this size. You go to CCM and listen to those sounds, kind of like the Hillsong / Bethel sound when they started doing that whole thing, and now everybody's trying to do it. You're going to hear probably more snares that are this size, that are, tuned lower. And a lot of people, like I used to be the guy who I would go through here and I would tune all my lugs on the top and the bottom like as low as I could get them, right? And just get, that's kind of in general, that's how you're going to get the low, that super low toned sound out of your snare drum. And some people really go over the top and throw a big fat snare head on the top of this thing. I used to be that guy. I am no longer that guy, because I just got to a point where I was like, my snare doesn't sound like a snare anymore. It sounds like a piece of cardboard. And, I don't really, I just don't like that anymore. I kind of aim for something in between super tight and tuned up high. And then, in between that and the super tuned down low and cardboardy kind of sound, I guess, if that makes sense. So how do we actually get to the type of sound we want? Right now, I am just getting ready to reset my snare drum. Something I like to do, right, is I've already started on some of these lugs. I think I started on this lug here, and I've been going around. I will loosen these things all the way up with my little screw here and then I'll start to tighten them. Like this is just completely loose, right? The screw's just out right now. I'll loosen that up, and then I'll just, with my fingers up here, I'll just tighten it up again, very lightly touching it until, watch this, boom, right there. Now, see, look at that. I can go that way, but I can't go that way, right? I'll put all the screws in that position where they just start to catch, okay? So I'm gonna do it with this one. Take it out, see there it's out. I'll spin it in, boom, right there. And it stops, right? Just take it to the point where I have to exert force to tighten it, and then I stop. And I'm gonna do it with all these. This is the last one right here. Take it out, screw it back together, stop, boom. Okay, so now all my screws on the bottom head here, they're all even, right? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start to tighten them up. And well, yeah, people ask me the question, how do you tighten a snare? How do you get, the sound you want? Well, okay, in general, the tighter you tune your heads, right? The more you screw in the screws. You want all the screws to be even with each other on each head, right? The tighter you screw those in, the higher pitch type sound you're going to get. Now, the top head of a snare drum, like right here, that's going to kind of affect more of the, how do I say this? I would say like the pitch of the snare, right? Like if I go around and I screw these things in, the more I screw them in, the higher that pitch is going to get, right? That's why we talk about like high tuned snares, medium tuned snares, low tuned snares, right? The more you screw the head in, the higher that pitch is going to get. The bottom side, and this is kind of the same, this goes for toms too, right? The bottom of a snare drum, the reso head, I like to think of that as the tone setter, right? So you have pitch and then you have tone / resonance. And to me, the bottom head is kind of what controls all that, because that's where your sound's coming out of, right? And I'm sure there's probably drummers out there and drum techs that maybe would disagree with some aspects of what I'm saying here, by the way, and that's fine. Everybody, like, this is one of those things where everybody kind of has their own method. There's not really a right way to do this and a wrong way. There's things you don't want to do, right? Like, you don't want to screw in, like, have 4 screws on this side tighter than screws on this side, right? And now your head's uneven, and that's bad for your drum. And the sound's going to be weird. You want to keep everything even. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, a lot of it's just playing around. You got to spend some time, right? Like, I'm going to be in here for a little bit, spending some time working on these things. So that's just kind of a general idea. What I'm going to start with here is I'm going to go I'm going to go on the bottom. I tend to like having my bottom a little tighter than my top. So, or sometimes even. Sometimes I like to turn them the same way, right? So I'm going to go 4 turns like this. So 1, right, 2, 3, 4, just like that. And then I'm going to go over here. Actually, I'm going to go across. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just turning my wrist, right? That's that movement. I'm just doing that 4 times. So that way I can kind of keep everything about even. So I'm going to do that 4 times, all right? On this side, then I'm going to do that probably on the top head. I'm going to do the same thing with the top head as I did in the bottom. I'm going to unscrew everything, get it to where it's, you know, like right here, it's unscrewed, just lightly turning it, and then let me see if I kind of show it like this. Boom. See how it catches like that? And now watch. See, I can't do that, but I can go that way. So right there. Now it catches, leave it there. I'll do that with the same thing on the top head. I'm going to do the same thing with this snare. So I'm not going to video all that, but just showing you guys that to me is the big thing that I've, I guess, sort of taught myself. I didn't really learn it from anywhere. I just sort of figured it out. And that gives me, it just gives me, you know, all the screws are at the same starting point. So I can keep everything even. Because over time, like you'll be in a rehearsal, you'll be in a, you know, you'll be playing somewhere and you'll kind of feel in the moment, like, oh, I need to do a quick little tune here. I need to tighten up this top head, and you'll tighten some screws, and you're going fast, and you inadvertently kind of get things uneven with each other. So that's why it's good to come in here and just, you know, balance everything out again. So that's the easy way to balance it out, just by ear, and then, you know, just go as tight or as loose as you're wanting. You know, if you play around with the different sounds, see what you like. Try having your bottom head a little looser than your top. Try and having your, you know, vice versa. Try them even, right? And see what you like. A lot of this also comes down to the shell of the snare drum, and I'm just rapid firing this stuff out for you guys so that you just have the information, because that's all that you need, is just the information of what to do. The shell type, right? Like this is a brass shell, okay? And I have found with this particular snare drum that it's pretty tony, right? Like it's fairly resonant. You can hit this thing, and if you go and look in some of my videos, you'll see. I mean, I've played this snare in a lot of the recordings I have on this channel, so you'll see. It's, you know, it can be pretty. It can have some overtones to it. And I like that. I like a drum to sound like a drum. I don't really like to dampen a drum too much. Like with my toms here, you know, I put about 1 gel pad on each of these things. Right. And it's, you know, that probably sounds like crap through the phone, but you get the idea. You know, I like to have that, hear that, kind of that resonance, right? I like that. I don't want it to sound like it's super choked, right? Some guys will go put rings on these things, and I get there's a time and place for that. Like there's applications where you need to do that. One thing that I do like to use as well, I've got it sitting over here, is a snare weight. You may have heard of these before, but it's just basically what you do is you can buy, you know, some people buy lots of these, and they'll stick them on their drums. They just clip right into the rim there. And it's just like a little bit of a dampening. I think it does a little bit more than maybe, say, a gel pad would. I actually already have a gel pad on this snare. Because being acrylic, right, again, we're talking about knowing your shell type. Brass has some tones to it, right? Acrylic is going to be louder, and it's definitely going to have some tones. Acrylic, in my opinion, can be the hardest shell type to control, right? You really have to get the tuning right on these drums, and that's why I recommend, if you're a newbie and you're just starting out and you want to figure out how to get to a good drum sound fast, I would not recommend buying acrylic anything, right? Don't do that until you have a good understanding on how to actually tune drums, right? You see those Vistalite kits and stuff like that, and I used to own one. They're great kits. They're very loud, right? Which is why you don't see a ton of them in the studio, right? Because they're hard to control. I mean, they really are. They're kind of hard to control because that's just the way the shells are. It's a lot more reflective. They're louder. They sound incredible live, right? That's why, John Bonham was kind of the first guy to come out with I think he sort of made that whole thing popular. And that's, where the whole Vistalite thing came from. And he was playing them live. You can play them on records too. I mean, I've recorded with them, and if you know what you're doing, you can make them sound great. I'm just saying, if you're kind of a newbie and you're just starting out, or maybe you just don't really, maybe you've been playing for a while, but you're like, hey, I can play drums all day long, but I don't really know how to make them sound good. Like, I know how to, do all the sticking, and I can do all the fills, and I'm technically proficient, but when it comes to actually working on the drums and getting the sound I want, I don't really know how to do that very well. Yeah, I wouldn't start off with I wouldn't take a Vistalite, right? I would probably, get a kit. Like, this is my, actually right now it's my only kit. This is my studio kit. It's a DW Collector's Exotic, which is pretty much top of the line DW. I mean, the only thing that you could really get that's more maybe regarded as more top of the line than this would be like a private reserve sort of thing. But I mean, that's not really that. I don't think they're that different. I think it's kind of more of a branding thing than anything. I mean, they sound good, but once you get to this level of drums, DW collectors type deal, these are, top level drums. They're maple shells. You can make these sound as good as anything. And maple's a great wood. It's a great all-around wood. That's why I got it. I've had birch before. I've had, obviously, acrylic shells, like I was saying. I've had, good Lord, a walnut. I had a Thomas Starr walnut kit one time. And those are great for in the studio. You can play them live. You can play anything live because you can mic anything up. But those are, like walnut wood. You can really control that a lot more easily. Those are great to play in the studio. Birch is great in the studio as well. A lot of people like that. Some people like mahogany, like maple/mahogany hybrid combos, which basically takes the maple sound, which is a kind of just a general all around, works, all around for anything. You can make it loud. You can kind of tone it down if you want to, depending on what heads you're using, depending on the type of muffling you're using. And but maple mahogany, kind of the mahogany, they'll throw a blend of that into maple shells sometimes, and it makes it a little darker. So it makes it's almost like a maple gum sort of thing, right? Maple gum deadens the resonance a lot. The gum wood just kind of deadens the resonance. Like DW jazz kits, I used to have one of those, and they're very. It's a much more deader, more controllable sound, right? And so it just depends on what you want, right? Like, I wanted something. One of the reasons I got this kit, I used to have a jazz kit. It was an amazing, beautiful kit. And I recorded with that, played with that for quite a while. And then I moved on to this kit because I wanted something that had more toms. I was doing a 1-up, 1-down config, and then I was like, you know what? I want to go back to 2-up, 1-down, which is I don't really ever anticipate moving away from that. I love it. But I wanted something that's a little bit more tony, right? Because I would have, these gospel sessions, and I'm sitting here with this maple gum kit. I'm like, this thing just isn't getting the tone that I want. I want something a little louder, a little bit more resonant. And so I picked this thing up, and it's been everything I wanted. So you got to play around with that stuff. I've owned a lot of different drum kits in my life, and I have traded a lot of different drum kits, just to explore what's out there. I've had Thomas, Gretsch's, DW's, Ludwig's. I had a Gretsch broadcaster for a while, and that was a maple/poplar shell mix, which is kind of similar to maple mahogany, I would say, from my experience with it. Gretsch kind of has their own sort of unique thing going on there, I think. But yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what works for you. And so the same thing comes into play when we're talking about snare shells. And just understanding the type of snare you have, right? So I'm going to do a head change here in a second. I've got this Remo Power Stroke P77 coated. It's an orange coated one. And how about this? I'm going to throw it on my already orange acrylic. I thought that'd look kind of cool. but I've been wanting to try out this snare head. I've seen a lot of people use it. A lot of people have told me, hey, this is a great head. And so I'm gonna give that a shot and change the heads out on this. Probably change the top head out on this thing. I'm gonna probably try this heavyweight dry on here. The other thing about this I should mention real quick is drum heads, right? Drum heads, I won't even get into all that because there's so many. What I will say is the only drum heads that I really would personally recommend, I play all Evans stuff. Remo, this is like the first Remo head I've ever gotten. Remo's great, makes great stuff. I'm more familiar with Evans. You kind of get to know a product and what they're, all the different models of what they're putting out. So I just have always stuck to Evans because I know off the top of my head what kind of head I want for what sort of application. These EC 2S's though, I don't know, the glare is kind of bad on that, but see over here, geez, yeah, it's kind of bad, but these are kind of popular. These are pretty popular drum heads for, toms and stuff. I've got them on all three of my toms, and they're great all around heads. I would say they kind of work on just about anything. I've played these heads on multiple different drum kits, and they've sounded great. I know G1s and G2s are awesome as well. I'm not a huge fan of coated heads on toms. Coated heads, like this is a coated head right here. See how it's white? See how this is called a clear head because you can see through it, it's clear. I'm not a super huge fan of coated heads. I think they work on snares. I like them on snares. I don't really like them on toms. I played them on toms. I don't know. I just never really felt it. I've always enjoyed the sound of a clear head more. I feel like it's just more what I'm looking for. You might play coated heads on toms and think it's perfect for you, And again, that's what this really comes down to is, get online, right? Or go to Guitar Center, or, whatever music store is in your area and just, play some drums and see what you think. Talk to some people, see what they recommend. That's what I would say in terms of heads, but what I will say is, in general, I would not play stock heads on drums. Most drummers that play at a professional level, like myself, will not play stock heads on drums. And stock heads would be like this DW kit, when it came out of the factory, it didn't have these heads on it, right? I bought these, I put these on the bottom heads as well. I got Genera Rezos on the bottom. Those are also Evans heads. You can see the logo kind of through the drum there. But, it didn't come like that. Originally, it had the DW heads on it. And the stock heads, you can make them sound good. There's nothing wrong with them. It's not like the end of the world if you leave them on. Most people tend to kind of want to put their own heads on them and stuff. Usually the stock heads can be made out of somewhat cheap material. They'll partner with Evans and Remo, and sometimes they make them, but it's not always their best product per se. Sometimes it is. I've actually gotten really good sounds before out of DW stock heads on DW kits, believe it or not. It's like I said, it's all personal preference. There is no right or wrong answer. And there's a lot of guys, a lot of, drummers out there that think that it's their way or the highway and, you got to do it this way. No, right? There are certain things that work in general, but at the end of the day, play around with different combinations. You can go online to Sweetwater and stuff like that and look through drum heads, and they'll give you descriptions like, hey, this gives you a little bit of a darker sound. This kind of is a more controlled sound. This will give you a little more tone, a little more resonance. Just go look through it, right? So get a feel for what you think you want. And you're going to find out that a lot of the heads, they're not that different from each other. Like, that's the other thing. They're not really that different. Some absolutely are, right? Like, the material in this heavyweight dry head is definitely a lot different than the stuff used on these toms. So they definitely can be different, no doubt about it. But what I would say in general is that you just got to go out there and play around with stuff, see what works, see what doesn't. And yeah, that's kind of my take on drum heads. So I think I've covered everything. I'm gonna put this up. If you got any questions on this stuff, leave them in the comments. I try to respond as many as I can, and if I can answer your question, then I will. If I can't, I will try and point you in the direction of maybe someone who can. I don't know everything, and I don't have all the answers, but I've figured out a lot of them along the way. And if I would say, with all the tips I've given you in this video, if you put these into practice, especially if you're a drummer, and I kind of geared this towards, people that maybe haven't been doing this as long as me, that don't have as much experience, but they want to figure out how to get spun up and get their drums sounding good, right? Well, that's kind of a general overview of what you kind of, that's sort of a blueprint on how to start, right? And everything I said about tuning snares, I would say the same thing with toms. It's just that biggest thing, if you remember nothing else from what I said, the biggest thing is keep on each head, right? This is one head, then you got your reso head, which is on your bottom. I got 6 screws up here, okay? I want to keep all those screws even. I got 6 screws on the bottom under here. I want to keep all those screws even. I don't want these 2 to be tighter than these 2 and looser than that one. I want all these screws all here. It goes for every drum, right? I want it all to be the same, okay? And if you can do that, all it is from there is it's just a matter of figuring out how loose or how tight you want each head. And if you're just starting out, I would recommend just going, maybe try to keep everything kind of even, with each other for now. If you're going to go tighter, you might want to go tighter on the top to start off if you want to get a little bit of a higher sound. It really depends. I started off like that, and then lately I'm kind of actually into having my bottom heads tighter than my top heads. So it really depends, but a lot of times it's good if you can just, maybe go 4 or 5 turns on each drum, 5 or 6 if you want to, or on each head, your top head, your bottom head, just keep them even, get a feel for it, and then start playing around with it. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.